Philadelphia 76ers have hired Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, as we know, him and the Clippers decided it was a mutual decision to separate from each other. Now Doc is with the Philadelphia 76ers as their head coach. I love the move. It's an obvious hire. There's not many times where you get obvious hires. This was an obvious hire. And I'll say this. For the Philadelphia 76ers, for Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, these guys need to hear a different voice. They need a new voice. And that new voice is Glenn Doc Rivers, a guy who's won an NBA title with the Boston Celtics, a guy who I think comes in right away and gets respect from Ben and gets respect from Joel. Now, here's the reality. Here's the reality of the whole situation. I look at the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, the fit between Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons is a funky fit. It doesn't go in like so. It's not like a puzzle piece that comes all together. It's not perfect. But anything, I think it can work with the ability that both guys have. But I will say this. Ben Simmons has to shoot. The jump shot, he has to get better. I'm not saying he has to be Duncan Robinson. I'm not saying he has to be Kyle Korver. I'm not saying he has to be a lights-out three-point shooter. I'm saying he just has to have a functional 15-footer, 15 to 17 feet. It has to be functional. It has to be a sit where it's respected. It has to be the type of jump shot that is respected. I think it has to be that. It doesn't have to be great. It just has to be solid. Magic Johnson never had a great jump shot, but it was solid and he was willing to take it. Ben, it's everything to the cup, everything to the cup, everything to the cup. At some point, and his body, he had the back and ultimately he had the knee. If you're taking everything to the cup, you're going to take a bang. You're going to take a little bit of a beating. And so he has to work on that jump shot. That jump shot has to be functional. It has to be. Joel Embiid has to get in better shape. There's no doubt about it. The man is not in optimum shape. I'm not saying he's fat. I'm just saying the man has to get in better shape. He's got to get in better shape. He in these playoffs, he started out great and he ended with a whimper. So he starts the game well, has a big time first half, and then second half he slows down a little bit. That's conditioning, man. Your conditioning has to be right. Tobias Harris, right now he's playing the 3. I'm not so sure he's better suited to play. I think he might be better suited to play the 4. Because you look at the Sixers lineup, there's not many guys that are breaking dudes down and getting their shots. Josh Richardson, he can get his shot. But it's not, he can get a shot. Ben Simmons struggles in that area. He can get to the cup, but that's about it. And when the competition increases, when the defense gets a little tougher, we've seen it in the playoffs, whether it was Kawhi and the Raptors or whether it was the Celtics before that, the year before that. It's difficult for Ben. He has a difficult time getting to the lane. He has a difficult time scoring the basketball. So I look at that situation, and again, Ben has to get a functional jump shot. Jump shot has to get functional. Tobias Harris, they probably gave him too much money. And Tobias struggled in the playoffs last year. He did. He struggled this year, I should say, in the playoffs. He struggled. He didn't play well. And they needed him to step up because Ben Simmons wasn't there. They needed him to step up, and he couldn't do it. He struggled. And the problem is, and one of the issues I had with this ball club coming into this season, and I'll say this, before I get to that, Jimmy Butler was the perfect piece for the Philadelphia 76ers. He was the perfect piece. Everything that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid couldn't do, Jimmy did. Jimmy was a guy that can, last second, you can give the ball to Jimmy Butler and he can create. You couldn't do that with Ben Simmons. You can't really do that with Joel Embiid. Ben Simmons Jimmy Butler is that guy. He was that guy for the Philadelphia 76ers. He hit a lot of big shots last year. And the reality of it is, guess who was the guy who hit the shot that tied the game for the 76ers in Game 7 against the Toronto Raptors last year? It was Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy Butler is a big shot maker. He is. And not having him, they missed that. They missed that. So they got to find a way to get it. Obviously, finding Jimmy Butlers are difficult. Guys that are like Jimmy Butler, that's difficult. Finding those type of guys. But they got to find a guy who can just do something off the dribble and create his own shot at an elite level, an elite shot creator. Tobias Harris is not an elite shot creator. He can't create a shot to that degree. Ben Simmons can't do it at this point in time. Joel Embiid can do it to an extent, but it's just not. He's a big man, and at times he's sloppy with the ball. Jimmy Butler was that guy. And so they missed him. And coming into this season, don't get me wrong, I was one of the guys I liked Al Horford coming in here. But I was one of the guys who initially wanted to just run this whole thing back. Let's run it back. Let's run it back with Tobias. Let's run it back with Jimmy. I was looking maybe to upgrade J.J. Redick in terms of defense because I know it can be a situation when J.J. Redick was against the Boston Celtics and played against the Boston Celtics with the Sixers, they took advantage of him. They took advantage of J.J. So I was thinking about maybe seeing if I can try to upgrade that position, not in terms of shooting, but in terms of defense. But I was okay and wanted to run that thing back. I wanted to run it back with Tobias and Jimmy and Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And if we had to go J.J. Redick as well. I wanted to run it back. That was my initial thing. That's what I wanted to do. Ultimately, that did not happen. Ultimately, Al Horford came in, and it was a funky fit. It was. It didn't work. It did not work. Now, I will say this. If Ben Simmons was healthy in these playoffs, it makes a difference. I'm not saying that. Actually, I am saying they would have beat the Boston Celtics because Ben Simmons, it's not necessarily what he does on the offensive end because they did miss that. And I think I was surprised how much they missed it because they really didn't have anybody to facilitate the offense. But they missed him really on the defensive end because Jason Tatum got off and they really didn't have an answer. And obviously, another reason why the Sixers failed was because of Brett Brown. Brett Brown was so slow to make adjustments. Too slow in terms of making adjustments. Brad Stevens outcoached him 2 years ago in the playoffs in a series that was very, very winnable for the Philadelphia 76ers. That was the year they lost Kyrie Irving, the Boston Celtics. That series was so winnable for the Philadelphia 76ers 2 years ago, and they lost in 5, which was unacceptable. Last year, I give Brett Brown a pass because I blame the loss to the Toronto Raptors in that second round last year on Joel Embiid. If you remember, Joel Embiid had a big-time Game 3, was unstoppable in Game 3. Game 4, talking about he's sick, this, that, and the third, wasn't going to play, ultimately did play, but was sluggish. He was sluggish in Game 4. Game 5, he was sluggish as well. So I just look at that with the Philadelphia 76ers, and I'm saying to myself, okay, I don't blame the loss to the Toronto Raptors last year on Brett Brown. I blame it on Joel Embiid. And I also look at it from this standpoint. When you look at the Philadelphia 76ers and those young guys, Simmons and Embiid, I don't think they realized how close they were to winning an NBA title. I don't think they realized it because the reality of it is if they beat Toronto, I think they had a good shot against Milwaukee because I think they matched up favorably against Milwaukee. And then you get to the NBA Finals and you have the Golden State Warriors who lose, Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant. And that, to me, is the only reason the Raptors won those NBA Finals is because Klay Thompson didn't play, and it's because Klay Thompson played the first 6 games, was missing it in Game 6 after tearing his ACL late in that game, but you lost him, and then you lost Kevin Durant earlier in the series to an Achilles. So I don't think the Sixers realized how much of an opportunity they had to win an NBA title. I don't. But I think now with Doc Rivers in there, a new voice, a voice that brings authority, a voice that you ultimately respect right from the get because this is a guy who's won an NBA title. It helps. It helps. Now, the way the roster is constructed is funky. You got to figure out what you're going to do with Al Horford. I do think they need almost like and Tim Hardaway said this, told me this a few weeks ago. I think they need, I don't want to say a backup point guard, but they need not a smallest point guard, but a guy that can create his own shot. They need another shot creator. And they need a guy who can create their own shot. They need it. Just maybe a guy who's just a flat-out scorer, almost like a Lou Williams type. A Lou Williams type who's just a flat-out scorer. You need something, and a guy who can create his own shot at a fairly elite level. You need that. And I think it should be interesting to see what the Sixers do with this roster. I don't think you can go with this particular roster. I think you're going to have to figure out something in terms of this roster and how you want to do it and how you want to maneuver this roster because it's a little funky. Tobias Harris, to me, doesn't belong at the 3. He's probably better suited at the 4. It's a little funky. Al Horford, you're stuck with the contract unless you move somebody else. So it's going to be interesting to see what the 76ers do. But I will say this. They got it right with the coaching hire. They got it right they got the right guy. They got the right guy. Now they got to build this team a little differently. Again, Embiid has superstar ability. Ben Simmons also, I believe, has superstar ability if he can find a way to get a functional jump shot. But here's my concern with Ben Simmons. The game came so easy and comes so easy for him. But also, he strikes me as the type of guy that, you know what, I don't have to go out there and work on my game because I can go out there and get 16, get 7 rebounds, 8 assists, and still be an all-star year in and year out. So, and yes, the 3, I agree. The East is fairly strong because, like, you got Milwaukee, you got Miami, you got Boston, you got Philadelphia, you got Toronto. So the East is fairly strong. But again, a healthy Philadelphia 76er team with Doc Rivers at the helm, and again, they got to figure out in terms of this roster. They got to figure this roster out. They got to do something because it's a little funky. But again, they got the coach. And now Elton, Doc, and the rest of the Sixers organization have to find a way to put a winner in Philadelphia.